Have you been looking for a book that's an easy read, is enjoyable, walks you through the dietary guidelines of the nutrition culture and why they're poor, and how to heal and achieve your goals? Then you won't want to miss this book review. Stay tuned as I go through the Dietitian's Dilemma and my thoughts on it. Hello. Recently, I ran across a book called The Dietitian's Dilemma, and by Michelle Hurn, who is a registered dietitian. And I wanted to just see what she was seeing in her clinical practice, and what she observed with patients, and what she dealt with in regards to like working in a hospital. Because very often you hear from doctors and nurses and people in the medical field who live a ketogenic life, somewhere on the spectrum of the proper human diet, and they know that it helps them, but they're not in private practice, or they work in a hospital, and so their hands are kind of tied as to what they can do for their patients. And unless they choose to go out on a independent basis, it can be difficult. And so I wanted to see what Michelle was dealing with. I know, what I see when I talk to people. So this is the book, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect from this. Given the title, I thought it was going to be all very science-based, lots of studies. To be quite honest, I thought it was going to be dry, as often books that teach you things are typically on the drier side, and you kind of gotta wade through it. And what I found was a pleasant surprise. This book is very well written. She was writing it during the COVID pandemic, and it was super engaging. It comes in both the paperback as well as audio, and I have both because I have a long drive to town, so I kind of use that as my classroom time. So I'll put on a health audiobook or podcast or whatever and read with my ears. And it was just super engaging. She not only goes through what she runs into as a registered dietitian, but also how she helps her clients, and where her hands are tied. She goes through studies. Everything she goes through is well researched, well documented, and there is a whole appendix of her footnotes and where she got the research. So it's solid. It's very solid. We're excited. So there's like a whole probably 15 to 30 pages. But she starts out going through diabetes. She starts out going through her story of how she almost died from malnutrition and eating disorders. And I'm going to warn you, it's very emotional. But it's things that we need to hear, because Michelle does a great job at bringing in and making this personable and tangible. So she goes through her story and going from nearly dying and being put in a long-term facility type place to try and help get her eating under control, as far as like she was under eating, basically starving herself. All the way through ending up as a vegan, and then how she found her way to essentially carnivore. So she goes through her story and her struggles, and that's a good portion of the very beginning of the book. And don't skip it. It's super important. It was really, really touching, and brought me to tears quite often, which in a book it takes quite a bit to bring me to tears. So she talks about her running and everything. She goes through because she works in a hospital. So she goes through what hospital patients are given, and then explains how this is actually keeping them sicker. So again, like I said, phenomenal. She really, really almost deep dives on diabetes and why the nutritional guidelines are crap. She goes through carb addiction, heart disease. She has a lot of people that she has interviewed, and nearly every story, every testimony of what these people have gone through just touches you so much, because when you, as a parent, when you hear some of these stories of these kids, they're now adults, but they started with eating disorders or feeling bad about their body or misdiagnoses when they were really young, and thoughts that would go through their head. And another warning, there are mentions of suicide and suicidal attempts in here because of those things. And really, that could be any one of us or any one of our children. And so it brings that emotion, because you can put yourself in these people's shoes, but also be so grateful that they're no longer there, and now they're using their experiences and what they went through and how they've healed and are still healing to help other people. So just absolutely phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. She's got a lot of graphs and graphics. Graphs and graphics from studies and things in here. She goes through protein intake and why we need to prioritize our protein, especially as we get older, to avoid things like sarcopenia, and not to fear the fat, and why eating this way actually helps with heart disease and doesn't cause it. It's just really, really good. Then she also goes through how to get good animal protein. There's some links in here if you don't have a farmer near you, that you can get a quarter or a half of a cow, or you don't want to buy the store-bought meat and you want to look at getting stuff from regenerative farming. She's got links in here where you can order meat, so that I really, really like that. Then she also goes through the nutrients of the food and obesity. So this is what I was meaning, she's got the graphics in here. So the obesity trend and how we see it, going up. And she goes through why. And again, this is not just her opinion. This is researched. She has everything is all documented, which I can really appreciate, because I don't like books that would just be like, oh, well, this is what I see as a dietitian and it's helped my patients. that's fine and that's true, but I really like having those studies and just the information all documented so that like you can say, hey, no, I'm not just, repeating what's in a book. I actually went and looked at her sources, and you can find these online, and this, what she's saying is true. So I really like that. She does go through some digestion stuff, which is really good. I'm huge on digestion. She goes through anti-nutrients. So when we hear plant-based, what people don't realize is a lot of these plants and things like that are chock full of anti-nutrients. And for many people, they can cause more harm than do good. I am not saying don't eat any vegetables. If you like vegetables and vegetables like you, that's wonderful. But it's good to be aware of what you're putting in your body, because you may want to pull them out for a little while and do an experiment and then add back in one at a time. And she talks about that in the book, because then you can see, you go 2 weeks with just animal-based protein, or a month or whatever, and then you add in broccoli, and now all of a sudden you're bloated, or your joints ache, or whatever, 100 different things, then maybe broccoli's not liking you. So she goes over lectins, oxalates, phytates, and again, she has all of these documented. She goes through how our bodies actually produce our own oxalate, and then how by eating loads and loads of foods of oxalates that you can actually overdo it. Now, I am not big on the whole oxalate poisoning or dumping or anything like that, because it's very much still, there's not a lot of science backing it. It needs more study. However, it does not seem to bother me. Like, I can have oxalate foods, but I'm not eating a ton of them, and I never have, to where it builds up and builds up and builds up. Some people, especially vegans, who are now, coming off of all of that, and they're coming more to a ketogenic lifestyle. So then they see that their oxalate intake is really low. For some of them, they do see oxalate, what's called oxalate dumping, and that's a whole other thing and out of my wheelhouse. It's not something that I've personally ever seen or experienced, but it is something to be aware of. She goes through wheat, gluten, and which we have experienced. My youngest daughter cannot have gluten, and many people that have thyroid issues and things like that do way better without having gluten, so that's really good. I love that she talks about bioavailability, because if you're eating something, you want those nutrients to be absorbed. You want to be able to unlock them. That's the whole point of eating. Yeah, we get energy and things like that, but when we are trying to eat healthy, we're doing so because we think that the food that we're eating is chock full of minerals and vitamins and all these things that we need, and then we're wondering why we're sick and it's not helping, and so we're either on medications or we're spending thousands of dollars on supplements. And I'm not anti-supplement, because I take supplements myself, and I'm a strong believer in supplementing where there are gaps here and there. But things like, you'll hear, oh, eat spinach. Spinach is a good source of iron. That's true. Spinach is very high in iron, but it's very low in bioavailability. So we're essentially eating empty calories, because the absorption rate of spinach is of the iron from spinach is 1.7% of the amount that you're eating, versus, or of 100 grams, I should say, versus 100 grams of meat, where you're getting the heme iron, which is better for you anyway than plant iron. The absorption rate is 20% for the same weight, essentially. And I don't know about you, but meat tastes a lot better than spinach. Plus, you don't have the, if you're sensitive to oxalates or things like that, then you might not want to have spinach. So, and she goes through the different vitamins, like vitamin B's and B12s, and why getting things from algae is not proper for the human body. She also goes through vitamin C, and I learned something. Well, I learned something through all this book, because I'm always learning. I don't know everything, but I didn't realize. So for me, vitamin C is like the miracle nutrient. We supplement with vitamin C, a time-released vitamin C, and will increase if we get sick. But I have noticed, since cutting out plants and going pretty much strictly animal-based, with a little veg here and there, but mostly animal-based, my need for vitamin C has gone down. Now, I still do supplement, and especially if there's colds or stuff going around, I'm going to take a little extra, because vitamin C is water soluble, and you use up your vitamin C quicker if you're stressed or you're sick yourself. And so I might not be able to eat enough, and coupled with digestion and things like that, and we don't make our own vitamin C. But my need for supplementing it has gone down, which means my whole food vitamin C lasts longer. That's a win. But what I learned was that vitamin C, in the presence of glucose, so when you're consuming something with carbohydrates, and she is going to say it much better in the book than my paraphrasing, so if I misspeak, read the book, definitely worth it. But the glucose molecule actually fights for where the vitamin C, they both sit on the same receptor. And so it inhibits your absorption of vitamin C when you have carbohydrates. So I found that really, really interesting, and that actually made a lot of sense to me in what I'm seeing in my own life. So she goes through, carbohydrates and fat, and eating those together, how your hunger signals are not going to be there. So anyway, it's just a really, really great book. Some of the doctors that have given this praise are doctors that I highly respect. So Dr. Benjamin Bickman, he is like the insulin god. Okay, he knows everything. That is what he works on is, and he's at Duke University, or no, he used to be at Duke University. He's at Brigham Young. I think he used to be at Duke. Well, regardless, he's a PhD, and he's at a university. Very phenomenal guy. I will be doing a review on his book, Why We Get Sick, because that is a book everyone should have on their shelf. So anything, insulin related or like hormone type, those type of things, I've really looked to Dr. Bickman's work. So I respect him so much. And Dr. Eric Westman, who is also phenomenal, just great. So she's got like a lot of people, a lot of really, really good quality people that have reviewed this, and I really just cannot recommend it high enough. It's an easy read, but not a boring read. And you will get, this is a book that I will probably read 3 or 4 times, because I know that I'll learn something each time that I read it. I just think she did a really, really phenomenal job. So if there's one thing that COVID brought out, that was giving her time to write this phenomenal book, because she wasn't seeing patients really at the hospital, so it freed up time. It's very touching, very knowledgeable, very well researched. So if you are looking for a book to add to your shelf, again, get The Dietitian's Dilemma by Michelle Hurn, Hurn. She's a registered dietitian, and you will not be sorry. She also reads the book herself in the Audible audiobook, and that's very pleasant too, because sometimes you get not so good narrators and it's hard to listen, but she does a really good job. So I hope you enjoyed this book review. If you did enjoy this, please share this, because my goal with my channel is to help as many people reach their health goals as possible, and I can only do that if you share the videos. And please be sure that you have subscribed to my channel and encourage your friends to do so. With that, have a great day.